The text message hit me like a punch to the gut as I sat in my Honda Civic outside the house where I grew up. Mom's words glowed on my phone screen in the Arizona afternoon heat. We changed all the locks on the front door and also the gate code. We no longer trust you. 3 years of caring for my elderly parents after Dad's stroke, paying their medical bills with my own money, while my younger brother Marcus whispered poison in their ears. All those early morning visits, grocery runs, and sleepless nights worrying about their health meant nothing now. I stared at the message that represented the ultimate betrayal from the people I loved most. My fingers trembled as I typed back "noted." That was clever, but I believe you forgot one thing. I pressed send and drove away, a mysterious smile spreading across my face. The drive back to my apartment complex off Camelback Road took 20 minutes, but my mind was already racing ahead to what came next. Marcus had no idea what was waiting for him. For 6 months, I had been documenting every lie, every manipulation, every cruel twist of the truth that my 32-year-old brother had used to turn our parents against me. It started back in March, when I noticed Mom and Dad becoming distant during my daily visits. Dad, who was recovering well from his stroke the previous winter, began questioning why I was handling their finances. Mom started making sharp comments about me being too interested in their money, even though I had been covering their medical co-pays and prescription costs out of my own checking account for months. At first, I blamed the stroke. Dr. Rodriguez had warned us that Dad might experience some confusion and personality changes during recovery. But then I caught Marcus leaving their house one afternoon when he was supposed to be at work. He claimed he had taken a sick day to check on them. But something about his defensive tone made my stomach clench with suspicion. That night, I made a decision that probably saved my family. I bought a small digital recorder online and started documenting every conversation I had with Marcus. What I discovered over the following months made me sick to my core. Sitting at my kitchen table now, I opened my laptop and clicked on a folder labeled Marcus Evidence. 43 audio files stared back at me, each one a piece of the puzzle that revealed my brother's systematic campaign to destroy my relationship with our parents. The first recording from March 15th captured Marcus on the phone with someone named Sarah, his girlfriend of 8 months, who I'd met only twice. Eddie's been using Dad's debit card for his own expenses. Marcus said his voice, carrying that fake concern he had perfected since childhood. I saw the bank statements, gas, groceries, even some restaurant charges. He's taking advantage of Dad's condition. My hands clenched into fists remembering that conversation. Every single one of those charges had been for our parents' needs. Gas for driving them to medical appointments twice a week. Groceries because Mom could no longer drive safely to the store. Restaurant meals on the rare occasions I could convince them to get out of the house for their mental health. The second recording was even worse. Marcus talking to our parents directly, his voice dripping with false sympathy. I hate to bring this up, but I saw Eddie looking through Mom's jewelry box last week. He was examining the pieces really carefully, like he was appraising them. I don't want to think the worst, but with all the financial pressure he's been under since his divorce, I had been looking at Mom's jewelry to take photos for their insurance company after Dad's stroke. The agent had requested documentation of valuable items in case they needed to file any claims. But Marcus twisted an innocent act into evidence of theft, planting seeds of doubt that grew into the forest of lies that eventually consumed my family. File after file revealed the depth of Marcus's manipulation. He told our parents I was planning to put them in a nursing home so I could sell their house. He claimed I had been researching facilities and had already spoken to real estate agents. He said my frequent visits were really reconnaissance missions to catalog their belongings and plan my eventual takeover of their assets. Each lie was perfectly crafted to exploit Dad's post-stroke vulnerability and Mom's growing anxiety about their future. Marcus understood exactly which buttons to push, which fears to amplify, which doubts to nurture, until my devoted care looked like calculated predation. The most damaging recording came from just 2 weeks ago. Marcus speaking to our parents while I was supposedly at work. I know this is hard to accept, but Eddie only started helping you after Dad's stroke because he realized you might need long-term care. He's positioning himself to control your finances and eventually inherit everything. Think about it. When did he start coming around so much right after the medical emergency? It's not love, it's strategy. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of months of careful documentation. Tomorrow, I would begin using these recordings to expose the truth. But tonight, I allowed myself to grieve the brother I thought I knew, the one who apparently never existed at all. Marcus had played a long game, and he thought he had won. But he made one crucial mistake. He never imagined that quiet, trusting Eddie might be smart enough to gather evidence. That oversight was about to cost him everything. The law offices of Sullivan and Associates sat in a converted Victorian house in downtown Phoenix, its burgundy shutters and white columns giving it an appearance of old-fashioned respectability that had drawn our family to Janet Sullivan 15 years earlier. I parked my Civic between a BMW and a Mercedes, feeling suddenly underdressed in my khakis and polo shirt for what might be the most important legal conversation of my life. Janet's secretary, a cheerful woman named Dolores, smiled as I entered the waiting room. "Eddie Hawkins, Mrs. Sullivan will see you now. She's been expecting you." I had called that morning, explaining only that I needed to discuss my parents' estate planning. Janet Sullivan was in her early 60s with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and reading glasses that she wore on a chain around her neck. She had helped my family through various legal matters over the years, from Dad's business incorporation to my parents' will updates after my divorce. "Eddie, come in, sit down," Janet said, gesturing to the leather chairs across from her mahogany desk. Her office smelled of old books and coffee walls, lined with law volumes and family photos. "I have to say, your call this morning concerned me. Is everything all right with Harold and Patricia?" "That depends on what you consider all right," I said, pulling out my phone and setting it on her desk. "Mrs. Sullivan, I need to know about any recent changes to my parents' estate planning, specifically anything that happened in the last month." Janet's expression shifted, her professional warmth replaced by visible discomfort. She removed her reading glasses and cleaned them slowly, a gesture I remembered from childhood when she was buying time to think. "Eddie, you understand that attorney-client privilege limits what I can discuss even with family members. Your parents' legal affairs are confidential unless they've specifically authorized me to share information with you." "I understand the ethical constraints," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "But I'm concerned that my parents may have been manipulated into making legal decisions while not in full possession of their faculties. My father is still recovering from a stroke, and there's evidence that someone has been systematically lying to them about my character and intentions." Janet's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's a serious accusation, Eddie. What kind of evidence are you referring to?" I played the first recording, the one where Marcus bragged to Sarah about getting Dad to sign documents while confused. Janet's face went pale as my brother's voice filled the office. "The old man was so mixed up yesterday, he probably would have signed anything I put in front of him. I just had to keep Eddie away long enough to get it done." "My God," Janet whispered. "Eddie, I need to tell you something, and I'm going to bend some rules because this suggests elder abuse." She pulled a thick file from her cabinet and opened it on the desk between us. "Marcus brought your father in 3 weeks ago. He wanted to transfer the house deed to Marcus's name for what he called protection against potential nursing home costs." My stomach dropped. "Dad signed over the house." "He did, but I had serious reservations about the entire process." Harold seemed confused during the meeting. He kept asking where you were, why you weren't there to help him understand the documents. Marcus insisted that you were too busy with work, and that Harold needed to make these decisions quickly for tax purposes. Janet showed me copies of the transfer documents. Dad's signature looked shaky, and uncertain, completely different from his confident handwriting before the stroke. I almost refused to proceed, she continued. But Marcus presented himself as the concerned son protecting his vulnerable parents, and Harold did verbally consent to the transfer. Mrs. Sullivan, I've been recording my brother's conversations for months. He's been systematically manipulating my parents, lying about my actions, and apparently stealing their assets. This signature doesn't look right to me. Janet examined the documents more closely, comparing Dad's signature to examples from previous years in his file. You're absolutely right, this signature is significantly different. If Marcus forged Harold's name, we're looking at multiple felonies, including fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. She leaned back in her chair, her professional composure cracking. Eddie, I've been practicing law for 32 years, and this is exactly the kind of case that keeps me awake at night. Elderly clients who become vulnerable after medical events, family members who exploit that vulnerability, and attorneys who sometimes miss the warning signs. What can we do to fix this? First, I need to hear all of your recordings. If they support what you're telling me, I'll contact Adult Protective Services immediately. We'll also need to involve law enforcement because the financial crimes Marcus has committed are serious felonies. The house transfer can be voided if we can prove Harold was mentally incompetent when he signed or if the signature was forged. I spent the next 2 hours playing recordings and explaining the timeline of Marcus's manipulation. Janet took detailed notes, her anger growing with each new revelation of my brother's deception. Eddie, what Marcus has done goes far beyond family drama. He's committed crimes against vulnerable adults, and he needs to face criminal consequences. But I need to warn you that this process will be difficult for your parents. They'll have to accept that one of their children has been systematically abusing them. As I left Janet's office with copies of all the suspicious legal documents, I felt a mixture of hope and dread. We finally had a path forward to protect my parents and restore their stolen assets. But exposing Marcus would shatter what remained of our family structure, and I wasn't sure Mom and Dad could handle another devastating blow after everything they had already endured. Still, justice demanded action, and my parents deserved protection from further exploitation. Tomorrow, I would take the next step in building a comprehensive case against the brother I once loved and trusted. Dr. Amanda Rodriguez had been Dad's primary care physician for 12 years, long before the stroke that changed everything for our family. Her office in the Desert Medical Plaza always smelled like disinfectant and fresh flowers, a combination that somehow managed to be both clinical and welcoming. I sat in the waiting room surrounded by elderly patients, knowing that what I was about to discuss could fundamentally alter how we understood Dad's recent medical treatment. Eddie, it's good to see you, Dr. Rodriguez said as she welcomed me into her consultation room. She was a woman in her late 40s with kind eyes and graying hair that she kept in a professional ponytail. I have to admit, your request for Harold's complete medical records seemed unusual. Is there something specific you're concerned about? Dr. Rodriguez, I need to ask you some difficult questions about my father's care over the past 6 months, specifically about medication changes that Marcus has been requesting. Her expression immediately became guarded. What kind of concerns are you raising, Eddie? I pulled out my phone and played one of the recordings where Marcus was talking to Sarah about Dad's medication. The anxiety pills are working perfectly. Marcus's voice came through the speaker. Dr. Rodriguez increased the dose again last week after I told her about those supposed agitation episodes. Dad's so foggy now that he'll believe anything I tell him. Dr. Rodriguez's face went white. Eddie, please stop the recording. I need to get Harold's file immediately. She left the room and returned 5 minutes later with a thick medical chart, her hands visibly shaking as she opened it on the desk between us. I'm going to break patient confidentiality rules because what you've just played suggests serious medical fraud and patient endangerment. She flipped through the chart, pointing to medication changes over the past 6 months. Marcus has accompanied Harold to his last 8 appointments. Each time he's reported episodes of severe agitation, anxiety attacks, and sleep disturbances that he claimed occurred when you weren't present. My heart sank as I looked at the documented medication increases. What kind of episodes was Marcus reporting? According to Marcus, your father was having panic attacks in the middle of the night, becoming paranoid about his finances, and experiencing what Marcus described as violent outbursts directed at you specifically. Marcus claimed Harold would become combative whenever you tried to help with his care, and that these episodes were becoming more frequent and dangerous. Dr. Rodriguez, I visited my parents almost every single day for the past year. I've never witnessed anything like what Marcus described. Dad has been recovering well from the stroke. His mood has been stable, and he's never shown any signs of the agitation Marcus reported. Dr. Rodriguez turned to another section of the chart. Based on Marcus's reports, I increased Harold's anxiety medication by 200%. I also prescribed stronger sleep aids and added a mood stabilizer to help with what Marcus described as increasing aggression and confusion. What would those medication combinations do to an elderly man recovering from a stroke? In the dosages I prescribed based on the symptoms Marcus reported, they would cause significant cognitive impairment, memory problems, increased confusion, and difficulty making clear decisions. Eddie, if Marcus was lying about these episodes, then I've been chemically sedating your father for months based on false information. The room felt like it was spinning. Marcus hadn't just been lying to our parents about my character and intentions. He had been systematically drugging Dad to make him more compliant and less able to think clearly about the lies being told. Dr. Rodriguez, do you have notes about Dad's mental state during these appointments when Marcus was present? She flipped through her consultation notes. That's what's been bothering me about these visits. Harold seemed increasingly confused and dependent on Marcus to answer questions. In earlier appointments, your father was articulate and engaged. But over the past 6 months, he's become almost childlike, looking to Marcus for permission before answering even simple questions about his symptoms. Did you ever speak with Dad privately without Marcus in the room? I tried to, but Marcus insisted on staying present because Harold supposedly became agitated when left alone with medical staff. Marcus claimed that separation anxiety was one of the new symptoms related to the stroke recovery. I played another recording where Marcus was coaching Dad on what to say during medical appointments. Remember, you need to tell Dr. Rodriguez that Eddie makes you nervous when he visits. Say that you feel confused and upset after he leaves. That's how we keep the medication levels where we need them. Dr. Rodriguez closed the medical chart and rubbed her temples. Eddie, what your brother has done constitutes medical fraud and elder abuse. He's essentially been poisoning your father to maintain psychological control over him. The medication combinations I prescribed could have caused serious health complications in a man Harold's age. Can the effects be reversed? If we carefully reduce the medications under medical supervision, Harold's mental clarity should improve significantly within a few weeks. But Eddie, we need to report this immediately. Marcus has committed crimes that could have killed your father. Dr. Rodriguez spent the next hour documenting everything we had discussed and preparing a formal report for Adult Protective Services and law enforcement. She also developed a plan to safely reduce Dad's medications while monitoring him for withdrawal symptoms. As I left her office with copies of Dad's medical records and Dr. Rodriguez's incident report, I felt a rage unlike anything I had ever experienced. Marcus hadn't just stolen money or property from our parents. He had been slowly poisoning Dad's mind with unnecessary medications, turning him into a confused shadow of the sharp, independent man he had been before the stroke. The evidence against Marcus was mounting, but I knew we needed more proof to ensure he faced serious consequences for what he had done to our family. Tomorrow, I would dig deeper into the financial crimes that had been funding his betrayal of our parents' trust. Tom Bradley's office in Scottsdale looked more like the accountant's workspace than a private investigator's headquarters, which I suppose was exactly the point. Financial crimes required attention to detail and patience with numbers, not dramatic confrontations like you see in movies. Tom was a former FBI agent in his 50s who specialized in elder abuse cases, and Janet Sullivan had recommended him as the best in Arizona for following money trails. Eddie, I've been investigating financial elder abuse for 15 years, Tom said as he spread documents across his conference table. What your brother has done to your parents fits a pattern I see repeatedly, but the scale and sophistication of his operation is particularly disturbing. Tom had spent 3 weeks tracing Marcus's financial activities, and the picture he painted made my stomach turn. Your brother has been systematically looting your parents' accounts for 26 months, starting well before your father's stroke. This wasn't opportunistic theft after a medical emergency. This was a long-term plan. He showed me bank statements highlighting small cash withdrawals from Dad's checking account, each one carefully calculated to stay below amounts that would trigger automatic fraud alerts. Marcus has been taking between $600 and $900 per month, timing the withdrawals to coincide with your parents' Social Security deposits so the account balances wouldn't immediately raise suspicions. How much total? $21,400 in direct theft from their checking account. But that's only the beginning. Tom pulled out a different folder. I've also documented Marcus selling your parents' personal property online. Antique jewelry, your father's watch collection, even some furniture pieces. My heart sank as I recognized items from my childhood home in the photographs Tom had printed from various auction websites. Dad's Rolex Submariner that he had bought to celebrate his business success in the 80s. Mom's pearl necklace that had belonged to her mother. A mahogany desk that had sat in Dad's study for as long as I could remember. The property sales total, approximately $17,000. Everything sold under usernames that I've traced back to Marcus through his email accounts and shipping addresses. So he's stolen almost $40,000 total. Tom's expression grew even more serious. Eddie, that's still not the complete picture. I need to show you why Marcus became so desperate to control your parents' finances. He opened his laptop and turned it toward me. Your brother has been gambling heavily for the past 3 years. Online poker sports betting and regular visits to local casinos. The screen showed surveillance footage from Desert Diamond Casino time-stamped just 2 weeks earlier. Marcus sat at a blackjack table, cash spread in front of him, that I now knew had been stolen from our parents' accounts. Marcus owes $53,000 to a loan shark named Vincent Corolla, who operates out of South Phoenix. These are not people you want to owe money to Eddie. Corolla's organization has a reputation for violence when debts aren't paid promptly. Tom showed me text messages that he had obtained through his law enforcement contacts. Threatening messages sent to Marcus with photos of our parents' house and references to collateral and consequences for continued delays. The most recent message sent just 4 days ago read, "Your family members are getting older, Marcus. Accidents happen to elderly people. Find the money. My parents are in physical danger." Absolutely, Marcus borrowed money from these people using your parents' house as promised collateral. When he couldn't make payments, Corolla's people started making threats. Marcus's manipulation of your parents wasn't just about greed, it was about survival. He needed access to their assets to pay off debts that could get him killed. Tom explained that Marcus's original plan had been to refinance our parents' house and use the cash to pay his gambling debts. But Dad's stroke had complicated the timeline, so Marcus developed the more elaborate scheme of manipulating their medications, turning them against me, and gaining legal control of their assets. The house transfer to Marcus's name that we discovered at Janet Sullivan's office was the first step in Marcus using your parents' property to secure loans from legitimate financial institutions. He was planning to mortgage their house to pay off the loan shark, leaving your parents with the debt while he continued gambling with the proceeds. I stared at the evidence spread across Tom's table, trying to process the scope of Marcus's betrayal. This was never about family dynamics or sibling rivalry. Marcus was using our parents as unwitting participants in a scheme to save his own life. Exactly, and based on the escalating threats from Corolla's organization, Marcus is running out of time. That makes him increasingly dangerous to everyone involved, especially your parents. Tom gathered the documents and photos into organized folders. Eddie, we have documented proof of multiple felonies, including theft, fraud, elder abuse, and criminal conspiracy. But we need Marcus to make additional incriminating statements to ensure conviction on all charges. What do you mean? I'm recommending that you contact the Elder Abuse Unit at Phoenix Police Department. Detective Lisa Morgan specializes in these cases, and she's very good at building comprehensive prosecutions. She might want to arrange a controlled confrontation where you wear a recording device and get Marcus to confess to more details about his scheme. As I left Tom's office with copies of all the financial evidence, I felt a mixture of rage and fear. Marcus wasn't just a greedy brother who had stolen money from our parents. He was a desperate criminal involved with dangerous people, and our entire family was at risk as long as he maintained control over Mom and Dad's lives and assets. Tomorrow, I would contact Detective Morgan and begin the final phase of exposing Marcus's crimes. The evidence was overwhelming, but I needed to be careful not to put our parents in additional danger while seeking justice for what my brother had done to our family. Detective Lisa Morgan's office at the Phoenix Police Department's Elder Abuse Unit was smaller than I had expected, but the walls told the story of someone who took her job seriously. Certificates from training programs, commendations for outstanding investigations, and photos with grateful families who had received justice after being victimized by financial predators. Eddie, I've reviewed all the evidence you and Tom Bradley have gathered, Detective Morgan said, spreading the files across her desk. She was a woman in her early 40s with short brown hair and sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. Your brother has committed enough felonies to put him away for 15 years, but I want to make sure we get convictions on every single charge. What does that mean exactly? It means we need Marcus to confess to additional details about his scheme, preferably while he doesn't know he's being recorded. The evidence you've gathered is excellent, but defense attorneys are skilled at creating doubt about financial records and medical testimony. A clear confession eliminates their ability to claim misunderstanding or blame other people. Detective Morgan explained that she wanted to arrange a controlled confrontation where I would wear a recording device and meet with Marcus in a public location. The goal is to get him talking about his entire operation while you pretend to be surrendering to his manipulation. You want me to act like I'm giving up the fight for our parents? Exactly. Tell Marcus that you're tired of the conflict and want to discuss a partnership arrangement. Let him think he's won, and see if his arrogance leads him to brag about how clever he's been. Criminals often can't resist explaining their schemes when they think they're safe. Detective Morgan showed me the recording equipment. I would wear a small device that would be hidden under my shirt and transmit to officers positioned nearby for safety. We'll choose a busy restaurant where Marcus will feel comfortable talking openly. You'll suggest splitting your parents' assets and ask him to explain how he managed to turn them against you so effectively. The plan made sense, but the thought of sitting across from Marcus and pretending to admire his betrayal of our family made my skin crawl. Detective Morgan Tom Bradley showed me evidence that Marcus is involved with dangerous people who have threatened our parents. What if this confrontation escalates into something violent? That's exactly why we're doing this in a controlled environment with backup officers nearby. Marcus is desperate, which makes him unpredictable, but he's also arrogant. We're counting on his need to feel superior to overcome his caution about discussing his crimes. Detective Morgan gave me specific instructions about conversation topics to pursue during the meeting. I should ask about the medication manipulation, the financial theft, the property sales, and most importantly, his plans for our parents' future care. If he's planning to move them into institutional care so he can access their remaining assets, we need that on tape. That afternoon, I called Marcus from the police station with Detective Morgan listening on a second line. Marcus, I need to talk to you about mom and dad's situation. I'm tired of fighting, and I think we should discuss a business arrangement. There was a long pause before Marcus responded, his voice cautious but interested. What kind of business arrangement, Eddie? The kind where we both benefit instead of destroying each other. I'm smart enough to recognize when I've been outplayed, and you've been very thorough in protecting your interests. Maybe there's a way we can work together instead of against each other. Marcus's tone shifted, becoming more confident. I told you months ago that cooperating would be easier than fighting me, Eddie. I'm glad you're finally being reasonable about this situation. We arranged to meet the following evening at Henderson's Diner on Camelback Road, a busy family restaurant where Marcus would feel safe discussing sensitive topics. Detective Morgan and her team would be positioned throughout the restaurant, ready to intervene if the conversation took a dangerous turn. The next 24 hours felt like the longest day of my life. I practiced conversation scenarios with Detective Morgan, reviewed all the evidence one final time, and tried to prepare myself emotionally for hearing Marcus confess to destroying our family for gambling money. Wednesday evening arrived with temperatures still hovering near 100 degrees, typical for Phoenix in August. I arrived at Henderson's Diner 15 minutes early, checking in with Detective Morgan's team and testing the recording equipment one final time. Marcus walked in exactly on time, wearing his usual khakis and button-down shirt, looking like any other professional meeting a family member for dinner. He smiled and shook my hand as if the past months of conflict had never happened. Eddie, I have to say I'm surprised by your change of attitude. I was starting to think you were going to make this difficult for everyone involved. I've had time to think about everything that's happened, I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heartbeat. You've been several steps ahead of me from the beginning, and I'm curious to understand how you managed it all so effectively. Marcus's smile widened, and I could see his ego responding exactly as Detective Morgan had predicted. Well, it wasn't that complicated once I understood Dad's vulnerabilities after the stroke. Medical trauma makes elderly people very susceptible to suggestion, especially when the suggestions come from someone they trust. As we ordered dinner and settled into our conversation, I realized that Marcus was about to confess to crimes that would destroy his life and finally bring justice for what he had done to our parents. The recording device captured every word as my brother began to detail the systematic destruction of our family. Marcus leaned back in the vinyl booth at Henderson's Diner, his confidence growing with each passing minute as he began to describe his manipulation of our parents in disturbing detail. The restaurant buzzed with typical dinner conversation around us families enjoying meals while my brother confessed to crimes that had torn our own family apart. The medication angle was brilliant, if I do say so myself, Marcus said, cutting into his chicken fried steak with obvious satisfaction. Dr. Rodriguez trusted my reports about Dad's supposed agitation episodes because she's trained to take family member concerns seriously. I researched exactly which symptoms to describe to get her to prescribe the strongest possible combinations. My hands clenched around my coffee cup as Marcus continued. The anxiety medications made Dad foggy and compliant, perfect for the psychological manipulation. When someone's chemically confused, they'll believe almost anything if you present it with enough authority and repetition. How did you come up with the specific lies about me? I asked, forcing myself to sound admiring rather than disgusted. That was the easy part, Eddie. I just took all your genuine helpful behaviors and reframed them as predatory actions. Every time you paid for their medical expenses, I told them you were using their own money without permission. Every time you helped with their finances, I described it as you gaining unauthorized access to their accounts. Marcus paused to drink his beer, clearly enjoying the opportunity to explain his cleverness. The beauty of the plan was that your continued helpfulness actually reinforced their suspicions. The more you tried to prove your good intentions, the more manipulative you appeared to them. What about the legal documents? How did you manage to get Dad to sign over the house? Timing and medication management, Marcus replied without hesitation. I scheduled the attorney appointment for a day when Dad's anxiety medication dosage was at its highest level. He was so confused that morning that he would have signed anything I put in front of him. My stomach turned as Marcus described forging our father's signature on multiple documents when Dad was too confused to understand what he was signing. I practiced his handwriting for weeks, Eddie. Post-stroke tremors actually made the forgeries easier because any inconsistencies could be attributed to his medical condition. The recording device hidden under my shirt captured every word as Marcus detailed the scope of his financial crimes. The cash withdrawals were carefully calculated to avoid triggering bank security protocols. I studied their account patterns and timed everything to coincide with regular deposits, so the balance changes wouldn't be immediately obvious. How much were you able to access total? Between the cash withdrawals, property sales, and the credit line I established, using their house as collateral, probably close to $65,000. Not bad for 8 months of work. Marcus's casual attitude towards stealing from our elderly parents made me want to vomit, but I forced myself to continue the conversation. What's your long-term plan for their care? That's where the business arrangement comes in, Eddie. I've already researched assisted living facilities that cost about half of their current monthly expenses. We move them into institutional care, sell their house, split the proceeds, and everybody wins. What if they resist moving to a care facility? Marcus's expression shifted, becoming darker and more calculating. That's been the biggest challenge in this whole operation, actually. Mom and Dad are still too attached to their independence and their house. I've been working on a solution to that problem. What kind of solution? The kind that removes obstacles permanently, Marcus said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Eddie, your persistent interference has become a serious threat to this entire operation. I can't have you continuing to ask questions and gathering evidence that could unravel everything I've built. My blood went cold as Marcus leaned across the table. I've been developing a plan to eliminate the Eddie problem once and for all. A car accident on those winding mountain roads you like to drive in the evenings. Brake line failure is almost impossible to prove as sabotage, especially when the victim has a history of financial stress and family conflict. The recording device captured Marcus describing his plan to murder me in detail. Vincent Carolla's associates have experience making deaths look accidental. For the right price, they'll handle the technical aspects while I establish an alibi playing poker at the casino. You've been planning to kill me? Nothing personal, Eddie, but you've become a liability that threatens my survival. The money I owe Carolla isn't optional debt. These people will kill me if I don't pay them back, and our parents' assets represent my only chance to settle the account. Marcus explained his timeline for the murder scheduled to occur within the next week before my investigations could cause more problems. Once you're dead, I'll tell Mom and Dad that you died trying to flee the country with money you stole from their accounts. That story will complete the manipulation by making them grateful that I protected them from their supposedly criminal son. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes as Marcus detailed his plans for disposing of my body, covering up evidence of the murder, and using my death to gain complete psychological control over our parents. He described forging documents to make it appear that I had been embezzling money from their accounts for months before my convenient death. The beauty of killing you now is that it solves multiple problems simultaneously, Marcus concluded. I eliminate the threat of your investigation. I complete the psychological manipulation of our parents, and I gain unrestricted access to their assets to pay off my gambling debts. Detective Morgan and her backup officers moved in as Marcus finished describing his murder plot. The arrest happened quickly with Marcus surrounded by police before he realized what was happening. Marcus Hawkins, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse fraud, forgery, theft, and medical fraud. Detective Morgan announced as officers handcuffed my brother in the middle of the crowded restaurant. Marcus's shock quickly turned to rage as he understood he had been trapped. Eddie, you have no idea what you've just done, he screamed as officers led him away. Those people I owe money to won't just forget about this debt. You've destroyed our entire family. Other diners stared in confusion as the arrest scene unfolded, but I felt only relief that our parents would finally be safe from Marcus's escalating criminal behavior. The recording had captured enough evidence to ensure serious prison time for my brother and complete legal protection for mom and dad. As Detective Morgan collected the recording equipment and began the booking process, I realized that the most difficult part of this ordeal was still ahead. Now I had to help our parents understand how thoroughly they had been manipulated and begin the long process of rebuilding trust and healing our damaged family relationships. 3 months later, I sat in Judge Patricia Williams's courtroom watching my brother receive a 12-year prison sentence for his crimes against our family. Marcus showed no remorse as the judge detailed his convictions for attempted murder conspiracy, elder abuse, fraud forgery, theft, and medical fraud. His gambling associates had also been arrested, and Vincent Kerala was facing racketeering charges that would eliminate the debt threat entirely. The months following Marcus's arrest had been challenging, but ultimately healing for our family. Working with Dr. Rodriguez, we carefully reduced Dad's medications and watched his mental clarity return like sun breaking through storm clouds. The confused, suspicious man that Marcus had created with unnecessary drugs gradually disappeared, replaced by the sharp, loving father I'd always known. Mom and Dad's journey back to trusting me had been painful, but necessary. As Dad's medication-induced fog lifted, they began to remember my years of dedicated care and recognize Marcus's lies for what they truly were. The recordings I'd gathered helped them understand how systematically they had been manipulated, but accepting the truth about Marcus's betrayal required tremendous emotional courage. Eddie, I don't know how to apologize for doubting you, Dad said one afternoon as we worked together in their backyard garden, planting tomatoes for the spring season. His hands were steady again, his mind clear, and his voice carried the strength that had always defined him before the stroke. Marcus told us things that made you sound like a stranger, someone we never raised. Dad, you were recovering from a stroke and being chemically manipulated. Marcus exploited your vulnerability when you were least able to defend yourself. That's not your fault. Mom joined us in the garden, her own guilt evident. In the careful way she interacted with me, we changed the locks on our own son, she said quietly, kneeling beside the tomato plants. We believed lies about the person who was sacrificing his own financial security to take care of us. The healing process had required family counseling sessions with Dr. Sarah Chen, a therapist who specialized in elder abuse recovery. She helped us understand that Marcus's manipulation had been sophisticated and deliberate, designed specifically to exploit the psychological vulnerabilities that come with aging and medical trauma. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what happened, Dr. Chen explained during one of our sessions. It's about choosing to move forward together instead of allowing Marcus's crimes to continue damaging your relationships. I'd moved back into my childhood bedroom temporarily to provide daily support while maintaining my own apartment for independence. The house deed had been restored to Mom and Dad's names through court order, and we had established new financial safeguards, including a trusted family financial advisor and regular oversight to prevent future exploitation. The most meaningful part of our recovery had been watching Mom and Dad reclaim their sense of agency and independence. As Dad's medications were safely reduced, his personality returned to the warm, generous man who had taught me the importance of integrity and family loyalty. Mom's anxiety decreased significantly once she understood that Marcus's threats and manipulations had been lies designed to control her behavior. My experience with Marcus's betrayal had inspired me to establish a support group for adult children dealing with elder abuse within their families. We met monthly at the Ahwatukee Community Center, sharing strategies for recognizing manipulation, protecting vulnerable parents, and navigating the legal system when family members become predators. The hardest part isn't dealing with the criminals, I told the support group during one meeting. It's accepting that someone you love and trust has chosen to become your family's greatest threat. Our group had helped dozens of families recognize warning signs and develop protection plans for elderly relatives. Many members had faced situations similar to mine where one family member systematically turned parents against their other children through lies and manipulation. The legal proceedings had also resulted in full restitution for our parents. Marcus's assets were seized to repay the money he had stolen, and additional compensation came from insurance claims for the emotional distress and medical expenses caused by his crimes. As I reflected on everything our family had endured, I realized that the experience had taught me profound lessons about the nature of love, loyalty, and justice. Protecting the people you care about sometimes requires you to become temporarily unpopular with those same people. My willingness to endure my parents' rejection and accusations while building a case against Marcus had ultimately saved their lives and assets. The ordeal had also reinforced my understanding that family loyalty must be earned through actions not assumed through genetics. Marcus's betrayal had been devastating, but it revealed the true strength of my character and my genuine love for our parents. I had discovered that my integrity was worth more than my family's temporary approval. Most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts when something feels wrong, even when everyone else dismisses my concerns. My persistence in documenting Marcus's lies and building evidence had prevented financial ruin for my parents and potentially saved them from much worse consequences. 6 months after Marcus's sentencing, our family had found a new equilibrium based on honest communication and mutual respect. Dad's health continued to improve. Mom had regained her confidence and independence, and we had all learned to value the relationships that survived the test of serious adversity. The last recording I made was not of Marcus's crimes, but of Dad laughing while we worked in the garden together. His voice was strong and clear as he talked about his plans for expanding the vegetable patch and maybe adding some fruit trees in the fall. "You know Eddie," he said, pausing to wipe soil from his hands. "I think this garden is going to be our best one yet. Sometimes you have to clear out the weeds before the good plants can really grow." My phone buzzed with a text message from Mom. "Thank you for never giving up on us, even when we gave up on you. Love, Mom and Dad." I smiled, knowing that our family was finally safe, whole, and grounded in truth rather than manipulation. The garden we were planting together would grow strong and healthy, just like our restored relationships. Now I want to ask you something that connects to all of our lives. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between being temporarily unpopular and doing what you knew was right for someone you loved? Sometimes protecting our families requires courage that looks like betrayal to the very people we're trying to help. Share your thoughts in the comments below about times when you had to trust your instincts, even when others doubted you. If this story resonated with you or helped you think about family relationships in a new way, please hit that like button to help others find these stories. Subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges and finding justice when it matters most. And please share this story with anyone who might be dealing with similar family struggles, because sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference in finding the courage to do what's right. Thank you for listening to this deeply personal story about my family's journey through betrayal and back to trust. I hope it reminds you that love, truth, and persistence can overcome even the most devastating deceptions. Take care of yourselves and the people you love, and remember that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones most worth fighting.